The year was 2347, and humanity had finally reached the stars, but the stars were not empty as they had hoped. 300 years ago, the first signal came from deep space, and everything changed forever. The hegemony made contact with Earth, and humans learned a terrible truth about the universe. They were not special, they were not advanced, and they were certainly not alone. The galaxy was filled with thousands of alien species, and all of them looked down at humanity like adults look at small children trying to join a game they cannot understand. The hegemony was ruled by the Valthari, an ancient race of beings who could read minds, move objects with thought, and bend reality itself with their psionic powers. They had conquered the galaxy not with weapons, but with the sheer force of their minds. No species could hide secrets from them, no army can stand against their mental attacks, and no leader could resist their influence. They were gods in all but name, and the galaxy knelt before them. Humanity was classified as a Class 7 primitive species, which meant they were barely worth noticing. They had no psionic abilities at all, not even the smallest spark of mental power. Every human tested came back negative, and the Valthari laughed at these strange creatures who stumbled through life, completely blind to the psychic energy that flowed through all living things. On a dusty border world called Nexus 9, far from Earth and far from anywhere important, a man named Elias Vance woke up to another difficult day. He was 34 years old, with tired eyes and rough hands from years of hard work. He had been a construction worker back on Earth before the integration, building homes and offices and all the things people needed. Now, he ran a refugee camp for humans who had lost everything when the hegemony decided their colony worlds were needed for more important species. Elias splashed water on his face and looked at himself in the cracked mirror. He saw nothing special, just an ordinary man with ordinary brown hair and ordinary features that no one would remember 5 minutes after meeting him. He had no special talents, no military training, no advanced degrees. He was exactly what the Valthari said all humans were, unremarkable and insignificant. But he got up every morning anyway, because people needed him. The camp held 3,000 refugees, humans who had been pushed off their homes and left to survive on this harsh world. Elias made sure they had food and water and medicine. He settled disputes and comforted crying children and helped old people find shelter from the burning sun. It was not glamorous work, but it mattered. His wife Maria would have been proud of him, he thought. She had died during the integration 5 years ago, when hegemony soldiers cleared their colony to make room for a Valthari meditation center. She had been trying to help a family escape when the building collapsed. Elias had not been there to save her, and that guilt lived in his chest like a stone he could never remove. He worked harder because of her. He helped others because she would have wanted him to. It was all he had left. That morning, a message arrived that would change everything. The High Council of Earth sent urgent communications to every human settlement. The alien queen, High Sovereign Yizareth of the Valthari, had announced something called the Tribunal of Worth. It was an ancient tradition that all new species had to complete. Each species joining the hegemony had to send their single most exceptional individual to demonstrate their value. This champion would face tests of mind and body and spirit. If they impressed the tribunal, humanity would be granted full membership with rights and protections. If they failed, humanity would be designated a servitor species. Servitor species were slaves in all but name, forced to work for other races with no rights and no hope of freedom. Elias had seen them in the cities, beings with dead eyes who had given up on life because life had nothing to offer them anymore. Earth could not let that happen. The government launched the biggest search in human history. They tested athletes and soldiers and scientists and artists. They measured intelligence and strength and creativity and courage. They scanned millions of people, looking for anyone who might have even a trace of psionic potential. The fate of 8 billion humans rested on finding one exceptional person. In a small office on Nexus 9, a board clerk made a terrible mistake. The computer showed 2 names, Elias Vance and Elias Vance Torres. The second man was a decorated military commander with dozens of medals and years of combat experience. He was strong and smart and brave, exactly the kind of champion humanity needed. The clerk meant to select him for transport to the throne world. But the clerk was tired, and the names looked so similar, and with one wrong click, the wrong Elias received the summons. Elias was in the middle of fixing a broken water pump when the soldiers arrived. They told him he had been selected for a great honor, and that he must come with them immediately. He tried to explain that there must be some mistake, that he was nobody important, but they would not listen. Orders were orders, and they had a schedule to keep. Before he could even say goodbye to his people, Elias found himself on a ship heading to the throne world, the center of the entire hegemony, and home to the alien queen herself. The ship was filled with champions from other species, beings of incredible power and ability. One could see the future with perfect clarity. Another could survive in the vacuum of space without any protection. A third could phase through solid matter like a ghost. They looked at Elias with confusion and pity, wondering what possible value this small human could offer. Elias wondered the same thing. The throne world was beautiful and terrifying. Great towers of crystal reached toward the sky, built not with machines, but with pure thought. The air hummed with psionic energy that made Elias feel slightly sick, though he did not know why. Millions of beings from thousands of species filled the streets, all of them more impressive than him in every way. He was led to the tribunal grounds, a massive arena that could hold 100,000 spectators. The champions lined up before a stage where the judges sat, ancient Valfari, with eyes that seemed to look through everything. And then Queen Yizareth appeared. She was tall and slender, with skin like polished silver, and eyes that burned with inner fire. She radiated power like heat from a sun, and every being in the arena felt her presence press against their minds. She had not attended a tribunal in 3,000 years, but something had drawn her here today. The moment Elias stepped onto the sacred ground, something strange happened. Every psionic being in the arena staggered as if struck. The judges gasped and grabbed their heads. Queen Yizareth sat forward on her throne, her burning eyes fixed on the ordinary human who stood confused among the champions. She could read every mind in the galaxy. She could taste every soul and know every secret. But when she reached for this human, she found nothing. Not resistance, not shields, but absolute emptiness. He was a hole in the fabric of reality, a void where a person should be. For the first time in 10,000 years, High Sovereign Yizareth felt something she had forgotten existed. The Tribunal of Worth began with great ceremony, as drums made of pure thought echoed through the arena, and lights danced in colors that had no names in any human language. Elijah stood among the champions, feeling more out of place than he had ever felt in his entire life. These beings beside him were the greatest their species had to offer, warriors and scholars, and masters of abilities he could not even understand. And he was just a man who fixed water pumps and handed out blankets to refugees. He had tried to explain the mistake to anyone who would listen. He grabbed officials and begged them to contact Earth, to find the real champion, to send him home before he embarrassed all of humanity. But the ancient laws of the tribunal were clear and absolute. Once a champion entered the sacred grounds, they could not withdraw. To do so would bring eternal dishonor to their entire species. Elias was trapped. The first test was announced by a judge whose voice rang directly inside every mind in the arena. It was the test of mind, designed to measure mental fortitude and psychic resilience. Each champion would face a psionic assault from a Valthari proctor, and their ability to resist would show their inner strength. One by one, the champions stepped forward. A being made of living crystal lasted 4 minutes before collapsing. A warrior from a race of telepaths endured 6 minutes of screaming agony. A creature with 3 brains and natural mental shields held on for nearly 10 minutes and earned great applause from the crowd. Then it was Elias's turn. He walked forward on shaking legs, certain that he was about to die or go insane, or both. The proctor was an ancient Valthari, with a face like carved stone, and eyes that had seen civilizations rise and fall. He reached out with his mind toward the human, and nothing happened. The proctor frowned and pushed harder. Elias stood there waiting for the pain to begin, but he felt nothing at all. He shifted his weight from one foot to the other, and wondered if the test had started yet. The proctor's eyes went wide with shock. He gathered all his power and struck at the human mind with enough force to shatter mountains. The effort made blood stream from his nose and his ears. He fell to his knees, gasping for breath. Elias looked around in confusion and asked if he should come back later. The arena exploded into chaos. Beings screamed and shouted and demanded explanations. The judges huddled together, speaking in rapid whispers that no one else could hear. Queen Yizareth sat perfectly still on her throne, but her eyes never left the confused human standing alone in the center of the arena. A second proctor came forward, younger and more powerful. She attacked Elias with everything she had, weaving illusions and nightmares and psychic blades meant to cut his sanity to pieces. Each attack was enough to kill a normal being 10 times over. Elias scratched his head and asked if maybe the equipment was broken. The second proctor screamed and collapsed, blood pouring from her eyes. Healers rushed forward to help her, while the crowd roared with fear and amazement. An advisor approached the queen throne and spoke in urgent tones. "Your Majesty, this is impossible. No being can simply ignore our power like this. He must be using some technology, some trick we do not understand." Queen Yizareth finally spoke, and her voice silenced the entire arena like a blanket smothering a flame. "He is not resisting us. Can you not feel it? There is nothing to resist. His mind exists outside our reach entirely. It is like trying to grasp water, like trying to cut smoke with a sword." "But, Your Majesty, if that is true, then he is dangerous," the queen finished. "Yes, I know exactly what he is." Word spread through the throne world faster than light could travel. A human had broken the first test simply by existing. A human had defeated 2 Valthari proctors without lifting a finger. A human was immune to the power that had ruled the galaxy for 10,000 years. Other species delegates began to whisper among themselves. They looked at Elias with new eyes, eyes filled with fear and wonder, and something that might have been hope. If the Valthari could not touch this human mind, what else might be possible? What other rules might be broken? The second test was the test of spirit, designed to measure emotional stability and inner peace. Champions were subjected to psychic projections of their worst fears and deepest traumas. They had to face the darkness inside themselves and emerge whole. When Elias stepped forward, the proctor hesitated. After what had happened in the first test, no one wanted to try again. But the tribunal laws demanded it, so the proctor reached out with trembling hands. This time something strange happened. The proctor could not read Elias's mind or attack his thoughts, but she could feel echoes of emotion radiating from him like heat from a fire. She felt overwhelming grief for a woman with dark hair and kind eyes. She felt guilt like an ocean threatening to drown everything. She felt loneliness so deep it made her want to cry. But underneath all that pain, she felt something else. She felt love that refused to die. She felt determination that would not break. She felt a stubborn insistence that life had meaning and that helping others mattered, even when the universe seemed cold and empty. She felt the heart of a man who had lost everything and kept going anyway, because giving up would betray everything he believed. The proctor pulled back with tears running down her face. She looked at the judges and spoke in a voice that shook with emotion. He passes. He carries more pain than any being I have ever touched, yet he stands unbroken. His spirit is not strong because he feels no sorrow. His spirit is strong because he feels all of it and chooses hope anyway. The crowd fell silent. Even the beings who had dismissed humans as worthless primitives felt something stir in their hearts. What manner of creature was this, who walked through fire and refused to burn? Queen Yizareth rose from her throne. Every being in the arena dropped to their knees in instinctive submission, their minds commanded by her overwhelming presence. Every being except one. Elias remained standing, looking up at the alien queen with nothing but confusion on his ordinary face. He did not mean to defy her. He simply did not feel the command that brought everyone else to the ground. The queen descended from her throne, something she had not done in 3,000 years. She walked across the arena floor toward this impossible human, her silver skin gleaming and her burning eyes fixed on his face. She stopped directly in front of him, so close he could feel the heat radiating from her body. She was tall and terrible and beautiful, a goddess among mortals, the most powerful being in the known universe. And she looked at Elias Vance, refugee camp coordinator, former construction worker, unremarkable man, and she said 5 words that echoed through history. "You will come with me." She turned and walked toward her private chambers, and Elias followed, because what else could he do? He was just a man caught in events too big for him to understand, carried along like a leaf in a river. But rivers eventually reach the sea, and some leaves change the course of mighty waters. The fate of humanity walked behind the alien queen, wearing dusty clothes and worn shoes, and the confused expression of someone who still thought this was all a terrible mistake. He had no idea how right he was, or how wrong. The queen private chambers were not a room, but an entire dimension that she had created with pure thought. Elias stepped through a doorway of light and found himself standing in a space that made no sense to his human eyes. The sky above was filled with stars that moved in patterns, and the ground beneath his feet was made of something that felt like glass, but looked like frozen music. Colors existed here that he had never seen before, and sounds came from directions that should not exist. He should have been terrified, but somehow he felt strangely calm. Maybe it was because he had already accepted that everything about this day was impossible. Maybe it was because fear required energy, and he was too tired to feel anything at all. Queen Yizareth stood at the center of her private universe, watching him with those burning eyes. She waved her hand, and 2 chairs appeared from nothing, one sized for her elegant form, and one sized for a human. She sat and gestured for him to do the same. Elias sat down carefully, half expecting the chair to vanish and drop him into infinite space. But it held firm beneath him, solid and real, despite being made of solidified imagination. "You are not afraid of me," the queen said. It was not a question. Elias thought about it for a moment. "I probably should be," he admitted. "You could destroy me without even trying. But I have been afraid for 5 years, Your Majesty. I have been afraid every day since my wife died. I am tired of being afraid. Whatever happens now, at least it will be something different." The queen tilted her head like a bird examining something curious. "Tell me about your wife." And so Elias did. He told her about Maria, about her laugh that sounded like music, and her stubborn determination to help everyone she met. He told her about the day they got married in a small church on Earth, with flowers everywhere and tears of joy in their eyes. He told her about the colony world where they built a home and planned to raise children. And he told her about the day the hegemony came, about the ships in the sky, and the soldiers in the streets, and the building that collapsed while Maria was still inside, trying to save a family that was not even hers. The queen listened without interrupting. She could not read his mind, but she could see the truth of his words written in every line of his body, in every tear that he did not quite manage to hold back. When he finished, silence hung between them like a heavy curtain. "You loved her very much," the queen finally said. "I still do," Elias replied. "Death does not end love, it just makes it hurt more." The queen was quiet for a long moment. Then she spoke words that shocked Elias more than anything else that had happened. "I envy you," she said. "I have lived for 10,000 years. I have ruled galaxies and commanded the fate of countless species. But I have never felt what you describe. I have never loved anything or anyone with such terrible devotion. My power isolates me from all connection. I touch every mind in the universe, yet I am utterly alone." Elias did not know what to say. How could anyone respond to the loneliness of a goddess? The queen stood and walked to the edge of her created dimension. Beyond the boundary, Elias could see the real universe stretching into infinity, stars and galaxies and wonders beyond counting. "I must tell you something," she said. "Something that could destroy my entire empire if it became known. The Valthari are not as powerful as we appear. Our psionic abilities are strong, yes, but there are very few of us left. We rule through fear and illusion, making others believe we are invincible. But if any species discovered that we could be resisted, that our power had limits, the hegemony would collapse into chaos. You are that weakness made flesh, Elias Vance. Your existence proves that the Valthari are not gods. If other species learned what you are, revolutions would sweep across 1,000 worlds." Elias felt the weight of her words pressing down on him. "What do you want from me?" The queen returned to her chair and leaned forward. "I am offering you a deal. Pretend to fail the final test tomorrow. Make it look convincing, and I will ensure humanity receives protected status anyway. Your people will be safe and comfortable. No more refugee camps, no more suffering. In exchange, you will disappear quietly, and no one will ever know what you represent." It was a generous offer, more than generous. It was everything humanity could hope for. Safety and security and a future free from fear. All Elias had to do was lose on purpose. But something bothered him, a thought that would not leave his mind. "What about the servitor species?" he asked. "The ones already enslaved. What happens to them?" The queen waved her hand dismissively. "They are not your concern. They were conquered long before humanity existed. Their fate is sealed." Elias remembered the beings he had seen in the cities, the ones with dead eyes and broken spirits. He remembered how they shuffled through their tasks with no hope and no joy, living only because dying required effort they no longer had. He thought about Maria and what she would say if she were here. She would have been angry, he knew. She would have refused to buy happiness with the suffering of others. She would have told him that some prices were too high to pay. "No," Elias said, "I cannot accept your offer." The queen's eyes flared with surprise. "You would risk everything for species you have never met? Species that are nothing to you?" "They are something," Elias replied. "They are people. Maybe they look different and think different, and come from places I cannot imagine, but they suffer and hope and fear just like humans do. I cannot be free while they remain in chains. My soul would never forgive me." The queen stared at him for a long time. Then she laughed, a sound like crystal breaking. "You are either the bravest being I have ever met, or the most foolish," she said. "Perhaps both. Very well, Elias Vance. You have made your choice. Tomorrow you will face the final test of the tribunal. You will enter the combat arena and prove your worth through battle. And I will choose your opponent personally." She smiled, and it was not a kind smile. She was a queen who had ruled through fear for millennia, and she would not let one stubborn human destroy everything she had built. "I should warn you," she said, "no one has ever survived when I choose the opponent. You will die tomorrow, Elias Vance. Die knowing that you could have saved your people, but chose pride instead." Elias stood and met her burning gaze without flinching. "Maybe I will die, but I will die as myself, not as someone who betrayed everything he believed. That has to count for something." He walked toward the doorway that would take him back to the real world. At the threshold he paused and looked back. "You said you have never loved anything," he said. "Maybe that is why you do not understand. Some things matter more than survival. Some things are worth dying for." He stepped through the light and was gone. The queen sat alone in her dimension of thought and wonder, and for the first time in 10,000 years, she doubted herself. The combat arena existed inside the heart of a dying star. The Valthari had captured this star thousands of years ago and bent it to their will, freezing its nuclear fire in eternal suspension. They used it for the greatest battles, the most important contests, because nothing less could contain the powers that were unleashed within. Elias stood on a platform of solidified light, looking up at the raging plasma that surrounded him on all sides. The heat should have killed him instantly, but Valthari's shields held it back, creating a bubble of survivable space in the middle of stellar fury. Billions of beings watched across the galaxy. Every world with a screen showed the arena. Every species that had ever feared or hoped or wondered about humanity was paying attention. The fate of an entire race would be decided in the next few minutes. The other champions had already competed. Some had won their battles gloriously, some had lost with honor, and some had died screaming as their opponents proved superior. Now only the human remained, the impossible human who had broken every expectation and defied every prediction. The queen had announced her choice of opponent, and the galaxy had gasped in disbelief. She would fight him herself. High Sovereign Yazareth descended into the arena on wings of pure thought, her silver skin blazing with inner fire and her eyes burning like twin suns. She was beautiful and terrible, a force of nature given form, the most powerful being in 10,000 years of recorded history. She had not entered combat personally since the ancient wars that founded the hegemony. She had not needed to. Her very existence was enough to make entire civilizations surrender. But this human required a personal touch. Elias looked at her and felt true fear for the first time since this nightmare began. Not fear for himself, but fear for everyone who was counting on him. 8 billion humans on Earth, millions more scattered across the colonies, all of them watching and hoping and praying that somehow he would survive. He had nothing. No weapons, no powers, no training. He was just a man in dusty clothes, facing a goddess in a cage of fire. "I want you to know that I take no pleasure in this," Queen Yazareth said. Her voice echoed through the arena and across the galaxy. "You are remarkable, Elias Vance. In another universe, we might have been friends, but you threaten everything I have built, and I cannot allow that threat to continue." Elias nodded. "I understand. You are doing what you think is right, so am I." The queen raised her hands, and the universe screamed. She attacked with power that could crack planets in half. Waves of psionic energy crashed against Elias like tsunamis against a shore. She tore at the fabric of space-time itself, creating wounds in reality that would have swallowed entire fleets. Elias stood unharmed. Every attack passed through him like light through glass. Every assault dissolved against his skin like morning mist. The power that had conquered a galaxy could not touch one ordinary man. The queen screamed in frustration and attacked harder. She summoned armies of thought constructs, warriors made of pure mental energy, each one capable of defeating the greatest champions. They surrounded Elias and struck at him with blades of solidified nightmare. The constructs could not perceive him. They swung their weapons through empty air, while Elias stood among them, untouched. To beings made of thought, he simply did not exist. The queen dismissed the constructs and tried a different approach. She reached not for his mind, but for the space around him, warping reality itself into a prison of twisted physics. Gravity became a weapon, pulling at him from a dozen directions at once. Elias stumbled, but did not fall. The void within him extended outward, creating a bubble of normal space that her distortions could not penetrate. He took one step forward, then another, walking toward her through the chaos of her assault. The galaxy watched in stunned silence. Species that had cowered before the Valthari for millennia saw their gods struggle against a creature they had dismissed as worthless. Hope kindled in billions of hearts, hope that had been buried for centuries. Queen Yizareth grew desperate. She gathered all her power, every drop of psionic energy she possessed, and prepared to destroy the arena itself. If she could not kill him with her abilities, she would kill him with physics. Fire and radiation and pressure would succeed where thought had failed. The dying star began to move, its frozen fury awakening as she released it from suspension. Plasma roared toward the arena like a tide of divine wrath. But Elias kept walking. Something was happening inside him, something he did not understand. The void that protected him was growing, feeding on the queen's massive assault. Each attack she launched made him stronger, converting her power into silence and stillness and impossible calm. The fire reached him and parted around his form. The radiation slid off his skin like water. The pressure that should have crushed him to atoms pushed against him and was absorbed into the expanding nothing that he had become. He reached the queen and stopped an arm length away. She had nothing left, 10,000 years of conquest, and she was powerless before a man who had never wanted to fight anyone. She could unmake solar systems, but she could not touch Elias Vance. "Kill me then," she said. Her voice was quiet now, defeated. "Prove that your kind are just as brutal as everyone else. Take your revenge for your wife and your people and everyone the hegemony has ever hurt." Elias looked at her for a long moment. Then he bent down and picked up a chunk of debris, a piece of the platform that had broken off during her assault. It was physical matter, the one thing she had not thought to deny him. He could end her existence right now with a simple act of violence. The galaxy held its breath. Elias dropped the debris. It clattered on the platform and lay still. "I did not come here to kill anyone," he said. "I came here because someone made a mistake with a name. I was never supposed to be a champion or a hero or a threat to your empire. I just wanted to go home and help people." He extended his hand toward her. "But we are here now, both of us. And I think maybe we can help each other instead of destroying each other." The queen stared at his hand like it was the most alien thing she had ever seen. No one had offered her kindness in millennia. No one had shown her mercy when they had the power to destroy. "Why?" she asked. "After everything my people have done to yours, why would you spare me?" Elias smiled, and it was a tired smile, full of old pain and stubborn hope. "Because hate is heavy, and I am tired of carrying weight. Because my wife believed that compassion could change the universe, and I want to believe she was right. Because killing you would make me into something I do not want to be." He kept his hand extended. The galaxy watched. The future balanced on the edge of a moment. Queen Yizareth, High Sovereign of the Valthari, ruler of 10,000 worlds, took the hand of Elias Vance. The queen hand was cold in his grip, cold as starlight and smooth as polished stone. She held on for a long moment, and something passed between them that words could not describe. Perhaps it was understanding, perhaps it was respect, perhaps it was something that had no name in any language. But when she released his hand, she was different, and the galaxy could see it. She turned to face the billions of watching eyes, the countless beings who had witnessed the impossible. Her voice rang out across every world and every ship and every station, clear as crystal and heavy with meaning. "The tribunal is complete," she announced. "Humanity has proven their worth. They are granted full membership in the hegemony, with all rights and protections. Let no being doubt their place among the stars." The arena exploded with noise as species after species reacted. Some cheered with joy, others screamed with confusion, and some sat in stunned silence, trying to understand what they had seen. For the first time in the history of the tribunal, a champion had won without dealing death. Elias slumped with exhaustion and relief. His legs felt weak, and his head pounded with the strain of everything he had absorbed. He wanted nothing more than to sleep for a week, and then wake up back in his refugee camp, back among people who needed him. But the queen was not finished. She raised her hand, and the galaxy fell silent again. "There is more," she said. "For too long, the hegemony has relied on fear and dominance. For too long we have divided species into masters and servants, worthy and worthless. Today, a human showed me something I had forgotten existed." She looked at Elias, and her burning eyes held something almost like gratitude. "He showed me that mercy is not weakness. He showed me that compassion requires more courage than cruelty. He showed me that the greatest strength is choosing not to destroy. From this day forward, the servitor system is abolished. All species shall have the right to freedom and self-determination. The hegemony will no longer rule through fear, but through partnership and mutual respect." The screaming that followed was so loud it seemed to shake reality itself. On 1,000 worlds, beings who had known nothing but slavery fell to their knees and wept. Chains that had bound generations dissolved in a single moment. Hope flooded through the galaxy like water through a broken dam. Elias watched, with tears streaming down his face. He thought of Maria and how proud she would have been. He thought of all the refugees he had helped, and all the ones he could not save. He thought of the beings with dead eyes he had seen in the cities, and he wondered if those eyes would come alive again. Not through strength or violence, but through stubborn refusal to become what he hated. He had changed the universe simply by being himself. In the days that followed, the hegemony transformed in ways no one could have predicted. Scientists from 100 species examined Elias, trying to understand his impossible immunity. They discovered that his power was not unique to him, but shared by all humans. Something about the way Earth creatures had evolved, on a dangerous world of radiation and disaster, had created consciousness that existed outside the psionic spectrum. Humans were not immune to psychic powers. They were orthogonal to them. They existed in a different direction entirely, a parallel path of awareness that the Valthari had never encountered. Every human carried this gift, this void that no thought could fill. Other species began requesting human ambassadors and advisors, beings who could not be manipulated or deceived or controlled. Humans became trusted mediators in disputes that had lasted centuries. Their very presence guaranteed honest dealing. Elias was offered everything the galaxy could provide: command of fleets, rulership of worlds, wealth beyond imagination. The queen herself asked him to stay as her advisor, to help her rebuild the hegemony on foundations of justice instead of fear. He refused all of it. "There is a refugee camp on Nexus 9, he explained. 3,000 people who lost their homes and need someone to help them. I was doing that work before all this started, and I would like to go back to it, if you do not mind." The queen looked at him with an expression no one could read. "You could do so much more," she said. "You could shape the fate of civilizations." Elias smiled. "I am shaping civilizations, one person at a time, one cup of water at a time, one moment of kindness at a time. That is the only way real change happens. Everything else is just noise." The queen granted his request. She gave him a small device, a communication link that connected directly to her. "If you ever need anything," she said, "for yourself or for anyone you care about, call me, and I will answer." Elias took the device and tucked it into his pocket. Then he boarded a simple transport ship and headed back to Nexus 9, back to his dusty camp and his broken water pumps and his people who needed him. Months passed, and the galaxy continued to change. The servitor species rebuilt their shattered cultures. The Valthari stepped back from dominance and began learning to cooperate instead of command. New alliances formed based on trust rather than terror. The universe became a little bit kinder, a little bit gentler, a little bit more like what it should have been all along. And on Nexus 9, in a small camp that most of the galaxy had never heard of, a man sat on a plastic chair and handed a cup of water to a child who had just lost her family. The child was crying, and Elias sat with her while she wept. He did not try to fix her pain or tell her everything would be okay. He just stayed present, stayed human, stayed exactly what he had always been. His communication device buzzed with a message from the queen. "You could end wars, Elias. You could reshape civilizations. Why do you waste your time on such small things?" Elias watched the child drink, watched her tears slowly dry, watched the first tiny spark of hope return to her eyes. He typed back his response with one hand, while holding her small fingers with the other. "I am reshaping civilizations," he wrote, "one cup at a time." He put the device away and returned his full attention to the child. She needed someone to see her, someone to care that she existed. That was worth more than all the thrones in the universe. Far away on the throne world, the queen read his message and laughed. It was a real laugh, warm and surprised, the kind of laugh she had not produced in thousands of years. Perhaps he was right. Perhaps the smallest acts of kindness mattered more than the grandest displays of power. She looked out at her vast empire and wondered what it would become. And across the galaxy, in throne rooms and council chambers, in former slave quarters and newly freed territories, a phrase began to spread. It passed from being to being, from world to world, carried by hope and wonder and something that felt like the dawn of a new age. "Send for the humans," they said. "Send for the humans. They see what we cannot." In the end, the greatest power in the universe was not the ability to destroy or dominate or control. It was the ability to choose compassion when hatred would have been easier, to offer mercy when revenge was justified, to see the worth in every being, no matter how small they seemed. It was the power of humanity, and it surprised everyone, even the alien queen.